Hey guys, it's Nick. Welcome to another episode of T-365, where I demystify Microsoft solutions for the MSP space. In today's video, I'm going to be covering a technical deep dive and demo of Microsoft's 365 Lighthouse, which just came out into public preview this past week. This is Microsoft's multi-tenant solution made specifically for MSPs. I'll be walking you through how you actually set this up. It is a free offering from Microsoft, and I'll go through all the requirements from a customer perspective and an MSP or indirect reseller perspective. And then I'll be walking through each of the tabs within the portal just to show you all the reporting, the management functionality, and all of that you can do. Before we get into today's video, if you do want to see more content around Microsoft 365 and the MSP space, be sure to subscribe. Getting into it here though, this is Microsoft's particular Lighthouse environment here I have for a test indirect reseller. So my dashboard here is a little limited just because I have a bunch of test tenants connected. Your dashboard should look a little bit more beefy in the sense of the data that you do see within here. You can sign into your Office account here, and this is the one in the sense of your indirect reseller Office account. Go under Billing and Purchase Services, and you'll want to click on Other Services here, and you'll scroll down. It's very hidden. You can click on See All Other Service Products, and you'll be able to check this out, which is Microsoft 365 Lighthouse for Partners Public Preview. And it's a $0 item SKU, so you can just check it out with a credit card or deciding an invoice on file. And then you will be able to sign into this URL, which is lighthouse.microsoft.com. This will take up to 24 to 48 hours to propagate. Just note that after you check out the SKU, you will first get some type of messaging here that states, hey, we're loading things up for you, we're loading all your tenant data in. It's going to be about 10 minutes. And that's really not how long it takes. It took for me about 12 hours, I would say, for this to fully come through, and I have a very limited subset of just test tenants within this environment, so I would anticipate you guys would have a longer wait time for this to actually propagate and pull all the data through. But again, just limited to one test case, so just wanted to give you a heads up. For me, I also got, after I tried refreshing after 10 minutes, I got errors saying that I had permission issues, which technically was not the case. You do need to be a admin agent or help desk agent within Partner Center to be able to access this particular environment. Additionally, if you log into this URL and you have not set up MFA, you will be prompted to do so and enroll in MFA to get access to this portal. Most of you, though, you're following the secure application model from Microsoft and have MFA set up with your Partner Center environment. So that's not really going to be an issue. So just note that if you receive those errors about permissions, just wait, a day or 12 hours like I did. I slept overnight, came back in the morning, and it was just fine. And you won't have those permission issues, and you'll see this particular dashboard when you get in. The main thing with this service, again, it is free for MSPs, and it is something that you can bolt on like you just saw within the environment of checking out. The main piece for your customers, though, is that they do have to be procuring a Microsoft 365 Business Premium license. Most of the functionality here relates to device management and Microsoft Intune, as well as Azure Active Directory Premium level SKUs for reporting around MFA adoption, for instance. So those are some of the prerequisites that you have to have. Another prerequisite, obviously, is that you have to have delegated access permissions into these customer environments, so they have to have accepted you as an advisor in their particular tenant. And lastly, Microsoft has this weird limitation, I think, which is saying that if a tenant has more than 500 licensed users, they're not eligible for this particular service either. So just keep all that in mind. You'll see more of that when we go into the tenant section here. This main dashboard, though, is what you see when you sign in, so you'll be able to see actionable events from this reporting, like device threats from your antivirus with Microsoft Defender if you're using that, the Antivirus Protection, the users flagged for risk, which I'll get into, device compliance, and then some actionable updates that Microsoft's making and publishing here. It looks like on a monthly basis is what their cadence is going to be. The cool part here with this particular section is that you can go ahead and navigate to a particular tenant, and it will update all these widgets here with only that tenant's data, and you could scope this to multiple tenants as well without the entire subset, and that will update everything accordingly as well too. So it just is a really cool feature just to be able to drill down from a tenant level. Next, we'll pop into the Tenants tab here. Here you'll see a list of all your active customers and their particular status as far as eligibility for the Lighthouse service. Going through the list here, active is pretty straightforward, just means they have the appropriate licensing and they meet everything for the standards of Lighthouse. Inactive is something you can set, which I'll show you here in a second. In process means that you've either recently added them as delegated advisor or you've gone through and recently added the Microsoft 365 Business Premium licensing and it's doing its data ingestion. Ineligible DAP means that you are not listed as a delegated advisor on the particular account, and this is something, probably highest use cases where you are no longer managing that particular customer. They've offboarded and removed you as the advisor in their account. Ineligible license required simply means that they do not have the Microsoft 365 Business Premium licensing. Eligible user count relates to that greater than 500 licensed users figure that I referenced earlier as a limitation of the particular service. So you can go through this list and you can see particular things if you click on the ones that are in an active state. And looking at this list, you can create tags here to apply to one-to-many customers. These tags could be for organizational purposes related to regions. They could relate to particular technicians who manage them. You really can get creative with how you apply tags to these particular customers. And then you could sort or filter based off those tags in the various sections, which we'll get to later in this particular video. So from here, you can click into a company that is eligible for the service. You can see relevant information about their users or devices, and then you can click into deployment plans. And deployment plans is something I'll come back to a little bit later because it relates to the baselines section. Next, getting into the users tab here, this is something that you can do in the sense of searching a particular user by name, and it pulls up that relevant user across all of your tenants, which is a pretty cool feature. This, in my testing, is also really responsive to net new users who are created. I created a user, I refreshed this page, and they immediately came through upon search. So it was really quick in that particular regard, so that was a cool plus. The actionable events you get here is to reset this user's password or block their sign-in. Microsoft does tout that they will be adding license management to this as well too, where you can assign licenses to these users, but it just doesn't seem to be here yet in the preview at this particular point in time. The Risky User tab next here is something that you can consume the risk detection information from Microsoft's identity protection that comes with Azure Active Directory. This is something where you can see atypical travel, anonymous IP addresses, the impossible sign-in from a location change recently, those things, and I'll link that below for you guys to see all that information. Ultimately flags the user as at risk potentially here. So there's different statuses here: confirmed, compromised, at risk, remediated, and dismissed. The only thing I don't like about this particular page is that it shows you all historical data here. So you'll notice there is some records even from 2018 here in this particular section. And when you click into this risk detections, it does navigate you into this particular tenant's Azure Active Directory log. But the Azure Active Directory log is only good for 1 month from this perspective. So something like that would give you no relevant information here for the particular user. It is really cool though in thinking about real-time detection from all of the users across your tenants and being able to see that here without having to go to every single one or set up some type of alerting in every single tenant. The main thing you can do here is you can bulk select users and reset their passwords at the same time, or you can go into a block sign-in activity as well. So it does allow you to select multiple across different tenants at the same time as well too, which is really cool. Only thing it doesn't have here is looking at type of alerting functionality and tying that into your PSA or your email that leads to your PSA or anything like that. That's the only thing that would be a really cool feature add if they added that. MultiFactor Authentication is here as well. Again, it is only for Azure AD Premium licensed tenants, and it is cool because it does show you conditional access policies, security defaults, and also MFA enablement via the per user MFA from the MFA portal. So over time, Microsoft has kind of stratified their MFA through those 3 methods. Conditional access policies is primarily the main way to go in here in the future, and they do recommend that you get off of per user MFA where you do enforced, enabled, or disabled. And so they show you a couple different things here, and they show you the conditional access policies that you have within the particular tenant. There's some things like I cannot click into this even though it shows me a cursor that's clickable. Again, may just be through public preview that we go through these things. You are able to connect to the particular tenant here again and go right into their conditional access policy section. And you'll notice here that there is more conditional access policies than is shown here, and this is because they're only reporting on ones that enforce MFA versus all of these which are doing various things in this particular tenant. And then you can see users not registered for MFA here in this particular section as well, which is pretty cool, but there is one limitation that I did find and tested against as well, which is the fact that it is reporting on external user accounts and shared mailboxes as well. And that is something that for most MSPs it's not going to be something that you put in this subset of users that is quote unquote in a disabled status. So that is one thing that I noticed that is a limitation. They don't have any filtering here to say remove shared mailboxes or remove external users. So that is a limitation of its reporting. Additionally, if you have something like Duo MFA set up, for instance, as a custom control in a conditional access policy, some of those users, or mostly all of those users, will still report as unregistered for MFA, and that is simply not the case. They're just using a third party. So keep that in mind while you're looking at this. One good thing that I noticed here was that whenever I enrolled a user into MFA, they were immediately discovered by this particular service upon refresh here. So it was saying that one of these users, I went in and I registered them for a second factor and enrolled them, refreshed the page, instantly were showing as MFA enabled and were no longer in this list. So that was really cool to see and be able to test against from a speed perspective. The last tab here we have is password reset, which is related to self-service password reset. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because it's pretty straightforward. You're just able to see the status and how many users have enabled and registered for this particular service so they can do their own password resets. Devices tab is next here, and this is looking at first overview of all your tenants here with the devices that are enrolled into the Intune service here or in the MAM service as part of Intune's multiple application management service here as well. This is showing the devices that are compliant, and it also showing the devices that do not have a compliance policy assigned to them, and in particular conditional access policies that enforce device compliance as well. So it's a pretty cool report that you get here right off the bat. You can go into the devices section and you can see all the devices, which ones are compliant, not compliant, etc. Then you can click on them here and you can see them and traverse into the particular Endpoint Manager Admin Center for them. And you can also see the particular errors for that device directly here without having to go through individually through the tenants as well, which is a great feature here. Clicking on them again just brings up the relevant information, and you get to see all that straight from this particular portal. You have your filters here of which you can do and show within this particular environment. So if you just want to see the status as not compliant, you can see all of those directly from within this particular section. Next tab here, policies, is related to all the compliance profile configuration policies that you have within the particular tenant, as well as your MAM policies as well. So I have a lot of duplicates here just from my testing, but it shows all of these completely. And the one cool feature that I noticed that works through the testing here is looking at a comparison of a particular profile or policy that has a similar property in the sense that it's targeting the similar platform. And so you can go here and you click on compare, and this will pull up the comparison sheet here, which would display relevant information of the comparison. The limitation that I'm showing you here now is that I believe what it's doing is it's picking up like old or deleted profiles as well too. And so when it does that, it doesn't actually show any information here on the comparison. And then going back in here, you can click on one of these and it may say something like, something went wrong, please refresh and try again. So again, just take that with the understanding that you may have some policies that are in here that are expired, and they do tout that it may take up to 48 hours to see changes when you look at the particular policies that are in place. And oddly, they've got this timestamp here of June 3rd for my tenant when it was last updated, which doesn't make any sense because I went in and created another policy and it was able to show up here as well. So not sure where they're getting that particular timestamp, but that was the only kind of weirdness I saw from within this tenant. You can see some of the compliance policies here. They have the basics as far as the information, and then you have all of your settings that you can see right here as well too. So no more having to traverse into different particular tenants and things of that nature. So that's pretty cool. The last one here, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on either. It's a lot related to the policy section, but this is looking at particular settings in your environment. This is taking the monitor logs from Intune and basically rolling them up across all of your tenants, so you can see where there's non-compliance and you can click into them and you dive into this particular tenant and you can see the setting compliance and you can see this information that they're reporting on here. So it's a pretty cool experience just from looking at this from a high level and being able to dive a little bit further. As far as your action items go, though, in the sense of making any changes to these policies or being able to create a policy and apply it to multiple tenants, that does not necessarily exist at this point in time, and most of it's just reporting concepts right now, which makes sense for Microsoft to do in this public preview and an introduction of the features while they get feedback from the community to make sure that's everything that we want to see before moving into writabilities in the particular tenants as well. The next section here is threat management. This is irrelevant if you do not use Microsoft Defender for your antivirus, but if you do, you can see relevant information about active threats or devices that need updating or devices that are overdue for scans. This section actually does look at the write capabilities as well too, so you can see in the Antivirus Protection tab here, this will load up and it'll tell you which devices need a quick scan or need a full scan. And you can actually select one or many and run them up here up at the top, or even reboot the devices directly from this page as well too. So this kind of functionality and looking at the management of AV and the management on a multi-tenant level of devices is where we get into this conversation of, is Microsoft going to be able to replace an RMM at a certain point in time? There's still some things that they're going to have to catch up on, obviously, to get to that state. But it's getting much closer with this type of functionality at your disposal, and something that you don't have to do additional work on in the sense of getting this into the particular service beyond actually having that device enrolled into Intune. So this is a pretty cool feature that I saw here and wanted to point out because this does provide those write capabilities. I don't actually have any threats within this particular tenant just because it's, again, a bunch of test data, but this would allow you to be able to see that particular metadata. The baseline section here is cool just because it gives you some recommendations and automation of the configuration of these recommendations. So here you can see the baselines that they have today, which are very limited, but they are something that you can see as far as detailed description, details, and user impact. There is nothing that you can do on this particular page, but again, if we fold back into the tenant section and we go into a particular tenant, we can click on the deployment plans, and this is where we're actually able to complete these particular sections. So you can see here you have the processes that you're supposed to define, and you can apply them in the sense that it will create this actual conditional access policy for you that requires MFA for admins. And you can also update this with action plan status. So basically, like following compliance standards to show that maybe you're accepting this risk or you're resolving this with a third party or something like that. So it's clearly documented throughout your organization. They give you some helpful articles here as well that are relevant, and then you can click on this and you can see what it's going to do, which is saying that it's going to create a conditional access policy that applies to all cloud apps and actions, requires MFA, but it's only going to be in report only mode, which is the case with all of these in the sense of the conditional access policies it does create. So it is really cool in the sense that it does auto create these things within the tenant for you, and you can apply that. And the downsides, I would say, is that it doesn't give you the extra flexibility to just go ahead and say add these groups or users to the baseline and turn it on. You still have to traverse back into the admin center to do that, but they give you links to do so. So this is a cool part of that. What a step up for me would be is saying that I could add that policy across multiple tenants and define everything at once versus having to go to each customer management portal. The last thing we're going to get into here is the service health, which again is a pretty cool feature. This allows you to see the service health of all the Microsoft services, if there's any advisories, and they tell you how many tenants are affected. So that's a pretty cool feature that you can see, and you can click onto all issues and you can click into them to see the actual message, any types of latest updates that they've posted, and then all of the tenants that are affected within your particular environment, so you can be more proactive with communications or with remediation that may need to be occurring after the fact, after this is resolved. And it will also help you with your support tickets that you get, particularly about these particular issues. So that's a pretty cool feature as well. Hope they expand that a little bit further to maybe tie into your PSA system or alerting. Overall, I felt like the service as a public preview was pretty cool. Lots of great reporting. I love to see Microsoft focusing in for the MSP space in particular versus focusing on the enterprise. So I think this is a really cool product. I think there's still a lot to go before we talk about the consideration again of replacing an RMM or even getting into full-on multi-tenant level management for your customers. There's a lot of reporting, there's a lot of management capabilities I think that they can grow on in these tenants and be able to provide you as the indirect reseller for your customers. So if you guys have had an experience with Microsoft Lighthouse and want to share your experience, please do so below in the comments. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below as well. Otherwise, like I mentioned earlier, like or subscribe if you want to see more content around Microsoft 365 and the MSP space. Thanks guys, have a great day.